back, everyone. The elections are still undecided, and part of the focus now, one of the main areas, is on Pennsylvania. To get a better sense of what's happening on the ground, we've invited to speak with us Paul Kengor. He's an author, professor of political science at Grove City College, and executive director of the Center for Vision and Values, which is a think tank at the Grove City College. Let's jump into that now. He's going to talk to us about what's happening on the ground. Paul Kengor, it's great having you on Crossroads.
Good to be with you, Josh. Thank you.
So with these elections, you're on the ground now in Pennsylvania. We're hearing about all these claims of, it sounds pretty chaotic. We hear allegations of voter fraud. We hear votes being counted because of the changes made to election laws still, being counted after the fact. What's the real situation on the ground as you're seeing it?
Well, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. I wrote a piece for the American Spectator. I'm a columnist there, and it was on Tuesday morning. It was called "Why Donald Trump Will Win Pennsylvania." And I was absolutely certain of it. And by the way, in 2016, I called Pennsylvania for Hillary Clinton. So I didn't think Trump could have won then, but I looked at all the data. And I walked very carefully through the data on that piece, not just polling, which finally turned his way the morning of Tuesday. I think the Real Clear Politics average for Pennsylvania had Biden up by 1.2. But that included polls that went back to about October 20th. So Insider Advantage, Trafalgar, even Susquehanna, all had Trump up in Pennsylvania. And so, considering the Real Clear Politics average national was Biden plus 7 or 8, you would think Pennsylvania having Trump up in 3 of the 5 final polls and 1.2 overall, well, that's a slam dunk. And also, too, Josh, I've gone through all the different county registrations. The Republicans, the Democrats lost 200,000 voter registration in Pennsylvania to the Republicans from 2016. I mean, Donald Trump had 2.9 million votes to Hillary in 2016. He's looking at about 3.3 million right now, an increase of 400,000 votes. And it's looking like he might actually lose Pennsylvania. I mean, as we talk right now, Biden has passed him. And it really shouldn't have happened. Trump was up by 600,000 to 700,000 votes when I went to bed Tuesday night, or would have been, I guess, early Wednesday morning. So whereas we watched that lead when I woke up, the lead for Trump dissipate in Wisconsin, even Michigan, I said, well, there's no way that Biden can make up 600 to 700,000 votes in Pennsylvania. And he did. And he did it through 1.1, 1.2, 1.5 million, maybe, mail-in ballots. Josh, for him to have made that up, he would have had to have won minimum 80% of those mail-in ballots. 80%, okay? And I know some people are saying, well, mail-in ballots skewed to Biden. And a lot of those are from Philadelphia. Yeah, but Trump, look at the numbers. Trump won almost 20% of the vote in Philadelphia, which is a surprise. I didn't think he'd get even 10%. A lot of those mail-in ballots are from Allegheny County, the county of Pittsburgh. Trump won 40% of Allegheny County. And a lot of those mail-in ballots, the national media doesn't know this, are from counties like mine, Mercer, which went for Trump at least 60, 65, maybe 70%. Beaver County, which is the home of fracking, the Shell oil cracker plant, the largest construction project going on in North America right now. That was one of the outstanding counties. York, which is a Republican county, that was one of the outstanding counties. So the idea that Biden could have suddenly won 80% plus of those remaining mail-in ballots, honestly, I don't think it's possible. And the Trump team is really right to be suspicious of this. I'm frankly amazed by it.
Now, we've been hearing a lot of different claims when it comes to that as well. One of the big stories we're looking at right now is that people are being denied access to observe at these places where votes are being counted still.
Surprise.
Some allegations, for example, like, I guess, it's been going back and forth in the court system. The Trump campaign filed lawsuits, making it so they could stop the counting of ballots until their own observers were granted access. Even after they won that, they were allowed to have access to these polling stations, or these stations where people are counting the ballots. Then they alleged that even after that was passed, they were still denied access, and they're accusing the local sheriff in Philadelphia, who's a Democrat, of denying them access, of not enforcing the law. And it's been going back and forth like this. What is the state?
Sure.
What is the state of things right now, as you've seen them, when it comes to this, of people being denied access to observe the counting of ballots?
Yeah, that's Philadelphia. I mean, it's just no surprise. That's exactly what I expect. In fact, in my piece for American Spectator Tuesday morning, I noted that the only possible way that Biden could maybe win in Pennsylvania would be fraud in Philadelphia, maybe a really shockingly inordinate a margin of victory by Trump or by Biden on early mail-in ballots. Yeah, mainly fraud. I mean, that's the only way that I could have seen this possibly happening. The denial of poll watchers, that's standard operating procedure in Philadelphia. That's what they do. Josh, if it was up to me, if I was in the Republican Party for Pennsylvania, I would put a camera outside every Philadelphia polling station to just count the number of people who walk in. So at the end of the day, you could say, well, wait a second. He won this polling station by 100,000 votes. Only 20,000 people walked in here over the last 24 hours. Where are you getting this stuff? I mean, it's that bad in Philadelphia. Well, I was going to say, I said in that article on Tuesday morning, I think it was the Trafalgar pollster, said that Donald Trump might need to win Pennsylvania by 5 to 6% to overcome fraud in Philadelphia. I think Trump won Pennsylvania by more than 5 or 6%, and it might not be enough to overcome it. He was up 58 to 41% late Tuesday night. I mean, I've done this every 4 years throughout my life. We in Pennsylvania, we watch the polls, right? Starts off at 7, 8 o'clock at night. It says the Democrat, 88%, the Republican, 12%. And then it just starts going like this all night long. Then it gets to about 50 to 49, and then it stops, and the Democrat wins. Well, this time it went 58-41. You say, wow, it's in the bag. And then it goes back the other way with all these mail-in ballots. I've never seen anything like it. And I know this year is different because of the mail-in ballots, but still, if you go, I drove the entirety of the state the weekend before last from Eastern Ohio. I'm 30 minutes from the Ohio border, all the way into Manhattan. And I've driven all over Western Pennsylvania. The signs, the literal signs for Trump, I've never seen anything like it. My hometown is Butler, Pennsylvania. That's the town that last Saturday had 57,000 people show up for Donald Trump at the Butler County Airport. I don't think they've ever had 57,000 people in Butler for anything. It's almost unimaginable. I could see Biden pulling it out in Wisconsin, in Michigan, but Pennsylvania, no way. This is and if there's still remaining ballots that need to come in from some of these other counties, Mercer, Beaver, York, and even Allegheny, I could see Trump still pulling it out. But the idea that right now, when I'm talking to you on Friday morning, that Biden has pulled ahead of Trump in Pennsylvania, no way. No way.
Well, that was something that Trump mentioned on election night. Now, it was a really bizarre situation. Of course, I was covering it live with NTD, our sister media. This show airs on as well. And it looked like he had it in the bag. Again, yeah, he had, it was like, 2.7 million. Biden had about 2 million. And then, it fluctuated to about, he had about a 500,000 lead by maybe 3 a.m. or something like that. It fluctuated a bit. Really, it looked like without a doubt he had it. And then Trump came out. And then what happened was basically the polls just stopped. Everything froze. And I remember we were on air. We were just kind of waiting like, okay, nothing's happening. Like, what's going on here? Everything stopped moving all of a sudden. And what are the chances that all the places that stopped moving were the swing states? The swing states all froze. And it just so happens and some were called early, like, for example, Arizona, in Biden's favor. But for the most part, they'd all frozen. And, it was bizarre, a really bizarre thing on election night. We did not have any answers. And then, of course, Trump comes out at must have been like 2:30 a.m. and says that they'd never seen anything like it. They were getting ready to celebrate. Everything froze. What happened? And I think the whole nation now is wondering, okay, what happened? Now, I know one of the things he's talking about doing is that he said on election night he would take it to the Supreme Court. And of course, in Pennsylvania, there were changes made to the election laws that allowed them to count ballots coming in late.
Yeah.
Allegedly, these were not done through the normal legal process. Can you tell us about what's happening on the legal side?
Yeah, so in Pennsylvania, the state legislature makes the election rules. And it was, I think, a 4-3 decision, the Pennsylvania court, for Democratic judges. We elect judges in Pennsylvania, at least at that level. And they vetoed the legislature, which they constitutionally aren't supposed to be able to do. And I think that went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and thanks to John Roberts, it was not taken up and not rejected. So you had the courts usurp the legislative powers of the court in Pennsylvania, and they changed it. By the way, one of my kids who lives out of state right now, who's in college, never got an absentee ballot. It never came. I wonder where that thing is. And it was ordered over 4 weeks ago. I wonder who got that thing. I wonder where it is. But to watch Donald Trump now for about 24, 36 hours, it seems, he's stuck at 3.2 million something, is bizarre to me because of that 1.1, 1.5 million outstanding ballots. Trump's going to get at least 300,000 or 400,000 of those. So I thought, well, okay, he'll hit 3.4 million, 3.5 million. It'll be enough to win. He's just stuck at 3.2 million. And meanwhile, Biden is just like a skyrocket. And note too that on election night and the day after, Donald Trump said we won Pennsylvania. He basically declared victory in Pennsylvania. And liberals who are listening, bear in mind, he didn't say that about Wisconsin. He didn't say that about Michigan, right? He said that about Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania was overwhelming. The numbers there should have been very, very clear. It's really the fracking state. When like my area is the Marcellus Shale region it's like the Saudi Arabia of Marcellus Shale. And I think the Biden campaign knew that it lost Pennsylvania when he made that remark at the end of the second debate.
Which is why they were trying to avoid saying it for a long time, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he really should be able to count on Pennsylvania still to this point. So Trump is right to pull out all the legal stops right now to try to challenge us. If he ends up losing Arizona and even Georgia, I don't know if he can lose Georgia because I think there's still 10 or 12,000 military battles out in Georgia. But if he ends up losing Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, it's going to be a moot point. But for now, they need to fight legally to see what they can do in Pennsylvania and still try to reclaim it.
Yeah, well, I remember looking at what was happening ahead of time because they were trying to overturn that ruling, this change of the election laws beforehand. The Supreme Court, it was kind of tied because Amy Coney Barrett did not weigh in on it. Of course, she just got approved. She didn't want to get involved ahead of time. We could presume that she will be the tie-breaking vote, though. And so really the state of the elections could be on her shoulders at this point.
Quite possibly. And frankly, John Roberts, if he wants to avoid, he seems to be a very political Chief Justice who's really worried about the perception of the court. To me, it would be a just move by Justice Roberts to go to Amy Coney Barrett and say, let's leave you out of this. And I'm going to go on a 5-3 majority on this one and send it back to Pennsylvania. Let Pennsylvania decide this the way Pennsylvania should through the legislative branch and keep her protected on this. If Roberts is worried about a political court, I think that's what he should do on this. But with Roberts, who knows? You never know what he's going to do. He seems to be most concerned about making liberals happy in Washington, not rocking that boat.
Yeah, well, this is the bizarre state of the elections, is that if it is a win there, it was won through what was really a law passed that wasn't really officially passed according to U.S. law, interestingly.
Right.
It was something that violated U.S. law that allowed this to happen, essentially. And whether the Supreme Court upholds that or not is going to be the big question. And the fact that they're not really making a decision on it is it's interesting, it's concerning. Personally, I do think Trump has a strong chance that Amy Coney Barrett will vote in favor on his side. The problem you're going to have after that, though, and I think they've been trying to avoid this, actually. The problem is if the Supreme Court ends up having to decide the outcome of the election, the Trump presidency going forward is going to be tainted. It's going to have the perception that he stole the election. And this is going to be, as far as I'm concerned, Russia collusion 2.0, essentially. It's going to be a scandal that lasts through the whole next 4 years, that impeachment and remove him from office and reinvigorating protests and riots. This is how I see things going if that happens. What are your perceptions?
There were BLM protesters in Philadelphia yesterday claiming that what the Trump campaign is doing is trying to deny the black vote in Philadelphia. So they immediately turn it into a racial thing, right? When, of course, the Trump campaign isn't thinking about race at all. In fact, Trump campaign is really impressed with the number of black votes that it's gotten in Pennsylvania, including in Philadelphia. Again, I know people listening are going to think this is a weird thing to say, but if the vote in Philadelphia right now is about 80 to 20%, that's good for Trump. I mean, you would think it'd be 90 to 10. I mean, Philadelphia is way off the scales. Allegheny, the home of Pittsburgh, 60-40. It's much more normal. So for Trump to get 20% of the vote in Philadelphia, he must have gotten a very notable number of black votes. But if a group like BLM is going to go there and say, oh, what Trump is trying to do here is suppress the black vote in Philadelphia, you can just see the liberals running with that and going wild with it and weaponizing it. And again, making this even more contentious than it should be.
Yeah, well, and I think this is where a lot of the American people are at right now, is that it is playing politics in a way that is, I think, severely disrupting basic social harmony and the normal functions of an electoral system. Right. They changed the rules of the game, essentially, and they're saying this is how it has to be played now. And if you don't want to play it this way, well, you're the one who's rigging things. In other words, changing the rules of the game and then accusing other people of not acknowledging the changed rules, essentially, is what happened.
Right. Like court packing.
There
right?
You go. Yeah.
Kind of the same thing, right? Like Roe v. Wade, like so many of these other decisions, like Obergefell, not leaving it to the states, not leaving it to legislatures, but the court overreaching and deciding on something that's not even in the Constitution. And they do this, and then when it divides the country, they call the other side that protests what they've done haters. And it's really outrageous that this is what the left does. And because they control the media, they get away with it.
Well, that's been the other big piece of this, too, is the way the media has been playing into it. Because not just the media, even social media and big tech, Trump himself was censored on election night. The president of the United States and the incumbent in the presidential election had his tweets censored on election night when he talked about alleged fraud. In other words, these big tech companies decided that they could say that what he said isn't true. And regardless of evidence, because you could argue that he had at least some circumstantial evidence to suggest his claim, that someone in Silicon Valley presumably just said, I don't believe this. President is censored. On election night, the American people don't need to hear this. And then also we had a lot of different media, big media, that did not even broadcast Trump's statements because they said he's lying, they don't want to believe him.
Yeah.
Right. And this is an interesting phenomenon, terrible phenomenon I think we have in the country right now, that journalists like to establish what is absolute truth. And regardless of who says it, even the President of the United States, anything that goes against that statement of absolute truth should not be heard by people. And we oftentimes see that their allegations of absolute truth get proven false. We saw this repeatedly with the CCP virus, COVID-19 outbreak, that things that were absolute, can't question it truths were proven false. We saw it with many of the scandals that came out, Brett Kavanaugh and the rape accusations, can't question it, false. We saw it repeatedly with the Russian allegations, can't question it, false, 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 and not only that, but many scandals on the other side. And the fact that they establish these things where they say, we say this is true and you cannot say otherwise, and then later on they get proven false. It's how can you have debate in this country? How can you have discussions in this country if that is not allowed? I guess just last thoughts on this. What do you hope people understand with the current circumstance of things?
Well, good question. And, when I was watching Tuesday night and I saw Biden declare victory in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, I was really appalled. I thought, he can't possibly declare victory in Pennsylvania. They're not going to win Pennsylvania. And then Donald Trump made his statement, and I was watching CNN and Fox back and forth. And CNN made this snotty comment about how Donald Trump has declared victory. I saw Allison Camerata, the former Fox saying the same thing. And I thought, how dare you guys? Biden did the same thing. Biden said the same thing. And you could just see the double standard, the dripping, oozing media bias. It's so bad. But what this shows the importance of election integrity, proper balance between the judiciary, between the legislative branch, and why you have to fight these things in between the 4 years. I mean, look, Josh, at how beautifully Florida handled the vote in 2020. You talk about every lesson learned there from 2000 with hanging chads and everything else. Florida got its act together. So other states are going to have to be the same. And I've been emailing with people for weeks who've been telling me, I know you watch Pennsylvania, but what you need to watch most of all in Pennsylvania is fraud in Pennsylvania. And even I thought, well, it's not going to be enough to overcome. I don't think Donald Trump's going to have a big enough margin. I don't know. It may have been enough. If it is indeed fraud, I want to be careful. I don't know that for sure. But to lose a vote margin of 58 to 41, 700,000 votes, with 1.5 million mail-in ballots, again, Biden would have needed over 80%. And I just don't see how this would have been statistically possible. I find this very dubious and very questionable. And the Trump team is right to really dig into this and take a hard look. And by the way, Pennsylvania cannot be declared by Fox News or CNN or MSNBC. It has to be declared by the state, by the Secretary of State, who's a Democrat official, but it has to be authorized by the state. It can't be authorized by the media.
Hey, Paul Kengor, it's a real pleasure having you on Crossroads. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Josh. I look forward to talking to you again. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. With that said, folks, please tune in again next time for our analysis on the key issues impacting the world and the crossroads of politics and ideology. As always, we're focused mainly on the U.S. and China and key stories as they emerge in other parts of the world. Also, if you want to support our mission of truth and tradition in journalism, please consider subscribing to the Epoch Times in print or online. We'd really appreciate your support. With that said, folks, as always, stay informed and stay free.